chapter 22, uh, to kind of jump right in. We said at the beginning of chapter 21, we're kind of breaking away from the somewhat chronological narrative, and kind of as a, kind of a last things to be said about the life of David. You have here near the end of the book, you have David's song of deliverance. David's song of deliverance. And I had you turn to Psalm 18. And if you want to stay in Psalm 18, you can. If you want to go to 2 Samuel chapter 22, you can. You could really follow right through Psalm 18 the same way you follow through 2 Samuel chapter 22. And the kind of the idea that this is David's psalm, but it's not just for David. It's not just for him. It's a song of reflection as he looks back on his life. You see in verse 1, David spoke to the Lord the words of this song on the day when the Lord had delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. So sometime after David takes the throne, he writes this song, is really all we know as far as when it's written. Sometimes after he takes the throne is when he writes this song, and it is a reflection. As he looks back on his life, he looks back on the difficulties of his life. He looks back on those times where he was beaten down, those times he was being hunted. And then he looks at how God delivered him through those things. And so it's a reflection, and I try to present this to us regularly. It used to be television. And, television is nothing compared to an iPhone, But the sermons growing up, the same, you heard, I'm assuming, I heard growing up, not just the evils of what might come through the television, but the evils of the time waster and the attention sucker that the television is. And we have just multiplied that times 10. We were talking just the other night about how, in the 90s, to have a 20-inch TV was like a brag, and now, good grief, I got a 13-inch TV in my lap, that's this far away. And, the one on the wall is that big. So, it's too big, but it's screens. They just suck us in. I say all that to say we are robbing ourselves of the opportunity to sit and reflect sometimes, sit and reflect regularly on how our lives have unfolded, and not just how they have happened to unfold, but how they have unfolded under the sovereign, governing, loving, good hand of God. And that's what David is doing as he writes this song, or this psalm, if you will. And he writes it, it's recorded as we're working through the life of David in 2 Samuel 22, but then it's presented to all of Israel, for Israel to use and for them to reflect. And so, generally speaking, it calls each one of us, as we work through this psalm, it calls each one of us to reflect on our own lives and to consider how God has brought us to this place, how He has moved to bring us to where we are. Let's jump in here, if you will. Verse 1 I've already read. After the Lord had delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. So he is looking at hindsight into his life. And the first 7 verses, and we're just going to work through them, and we are going to read them all, Lord willing, and we're just going to work through them piece by piece. But the first section, what we need to notice is that the Lord is the refuge of his people. The Lord is the refuge of his people. As I read through here, notice how regularly David says, my. And he's not speaking selfishly, he's speaking personally. The Lord, verse 2, is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, the God of my strength in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold, my refuge, my Savior. You save me from violence. I will call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. When the waves of death surrounded me, the floods of ungodliness made me afraid. The sorrows of Sheol surrounded me, the snares of death controlled me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, and I cried out to God, and He heard my voice from His temple, and my cry entered His ears. Now, this is a song, or this is a psalm or a song. It is a poem in so many ways. And I think sometimes one of the worst things that you can do with a poem is try to work through word by word, piece by piece, section by section, and try to put down some definitives on a poem. That's not how poetry, or that's not how a song is really intended to be ingested. Are you following me? And so I'm not going to try to do that tonight. There's 51 verses here. It would take us a long time to do that. And I don't think it would be the best treatment of the text anyway to do it that way. But what you can see, and as you read, and the purpose of using song and poetry, the purpose of using some of these analogies is to relay the depth of the anguish, if you will, or of the despair, and to leave it general enough as to be relatable. Right? And that's what David has done. So a couple of things that I want us to note as we have read through here. First of all, God is personally known by those who He saves. David does not speak about the rock, does not speak about the one who can save, does not speak about the God who is strong or the God who is trustworthy. He is talking about His God. He is talking about His trust. He is talking about His rock, His deliverance. This seems to be happening more often than regularly, and I don't know why, but my mind goes back. It seems like on Sunday morning I keep talking about Wednesday night, and on Wednesday night I keep talking about Sunday morning, but here we go again. Sunday morning was about how the work that Christ has done in time and in space, in history, a true event in times past, but what does that do for me? Man has gone to the moon. I haven't gone to the moon. Man can split the atom. I can't split the atom. There's a million things that men can do. What about me? Kind of to put it that way. And the point is, you can know, and this is why, does Jesus care when my heart is pained? Does Jesus care when the waves of death surround me, when the floods of ungodliness make me afraid, when the sorrow of Sheol surrounds me? Does Jesus care? Oh, yes, He cares. I know He cares. I know He does. The question is, do we run to Him? He is a fortress. He is a strong place. He is a shield. But that doesn't help you unless He's your shield, unless He's your fortress, unless you allow Him to be your deliverer. There's a personal nature to this, that I need my rock. I need my fortress. I need my shield. Conversations about wedding and marriage and all of these things are going on. Listen, let me put it this way, I am my wife's rock. Some of you wives are nodding your head. Not because you agree I'm Shanna's rock, but because you feel my husband is my rock. Right? And in some ways God has given, I don't mean that in place of Christ. You understand what I'm saying? God has given us to each other for that. Okay? And Pam nodded. Good for you, Dewey. I'll use that example. Pam doesn't mind speaking up. Pam, I'm not your rock. No. Dewey is her rock. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at here? When we think we can know that God is our rock, but we must recognize, we must actively fall upon my rock, my God, my shield. That takes activity, that takes direction, that takes focus, that takes turning ourselves, running towards the one who is my rock. He is my rock, but notice David is concerned about all the troubles that are bombarding upon himself. I tried to stress that when reading through. Me, when I'm surrounded, when the snares of death, in my distress. In my distress. Does Jesus care? I know He cares. God hears the cries and the cares of his people. In my distress, I called upon the Lord. I cried out to my God. He heard my voice from his temple, and my cry entered his ears. That's my God recognizing my cries and coming to my rescue. It's all very personal. God from his temple hears our cries, hears our prayers. And let's see how he reacts. The Lord is the refuge of his people. So the question is, when distresses expose our helplessness, do we just seek relief? Do we seek situational solutions? Or do we call upon the Lord, who is our help and our rescue? So secondarily, in verses 8 all the way through verse 20, the Lord intervenes for his people. The Lord intervenes for his people. God is not indifferent. They say the worst thing that you can be is indifferent. You know, you can, if you hate somebody, at least you feel something towards them. It's when you don't care anything about them anymore. You are completely indifferent to an individual. You have really pushed them aside and cut them off. I mean, you know, the person that I get mad at most is my wife. And all God's people went, ugh, shouldn't say that out loud. It's true. You know why? Because that's the person I bump up against most often, okay? And it's also the person that I care the most what they think. Thank you, Shave. That's right. If somebody, you know, driving down the road wants to roll the window down, honk their horn, and tell me I'm an idiot, okay, that doesn't bother me. I don't respect your opinion. Plus, I'm not a great driver. I'm sorry. But if my wife wants to speak that way to me, it matters. It is my concern. I care about what she thinks. God is not indifferent. David says, he heard my voice. My cry entered his ears. Then, verse 8, God steps in. And there's so much, again, dramatic, poetic imagery to describe God's intervention. You're going to see the earth is going to reel, the heavens are going to tremble, smoke and fire proceed from God. He rides on a cherub, thunders from heaven, and lays bare the foundation of the world. God is coming in all of his terribleness to save David from his enemies, to save David from difficulties and terrible circumstances. God heard then, verse 8, the earth shook and trembled, the foundations of heaven quaked and were shaken, because he was angry. Why is God angry? Because his children are being mistreated. Smoke went up from his nostrils and devouring fire from his mouth. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down with darkness under his feet. He rode upon a cherub and flew. He was seen upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness canopies around him, dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. From the brightness before him, coals of fire were kindled. The Lord thundered from heaven, and the Most High uttered his voice. He sent out arrows and scattered them, lightning bolts, and he vanquished them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, the foundations of the world were uncovered. At the rebuke of the Lord, at the blast of the breath of his nostrils, he sent from above, he took me, he drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy, from those who hated me, for they were too strong for me. They comforted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He also brought me out into a broad place. He delivered me because he delighted in me. God shows his concern and his care for evil and violence by coming and delivering his people. David specifically. Notice David doesn't name, you could not walk through here any of these and go, oh, that's when God delivered David from. That's not how it's written. What you can do is you can work through them and go, that kind of sounds like him parting the Red Sea, right? The breath of his nostrils, parting the waters. That kind of sounds like Moses. That verb there, drew me out of the water. You learned last week or a couple of weeks ago that name Moses because he was taken out of the water. And what we see is that in distress, in all types of distresses, that God shows up in all types of ways. Sometimes in strange ways. When Israel is being oppressed by Egypt, and the Pharaoh is trying to kill all the male babies, God shows up by protecting one little boy in a basket who was drawn out by the daughter of Pharaoh. Right? God doesn't always come thundering in the way that we would like. All of us men like to imagine that if our wives or children were in true and sincere danger, that we would be able and ready to come in some kind of similar torrent of response, in protection, in defense. I hear this, I can't actually say this is true about my wife, but I hear sometimes that some wives, they would like to fuss about the temperature in the car, And you're going, he just went from talking about running and protecting. Stay with me here. Right? And the comment, the air is on me, should be taken as extensively as if she were to say, a bear is on me, And I say that to say, sometimes, because it's easier to project onto somebody else, sometimes the response and the concern is just not as heavy as we are afraid that it is. Do we recognize, my point is, do we recognize that if God and when God doesn't come in, swoop in, and alleviate all of our circumstances, it's not because He's indifferent. It's not because He has given up on us. It may not even be because it's not a real problem or situation. It's because He is watching and He is in control and He is in charge. He says, don't worry about it. If you don't see Him coming in a rumbling cloud right now, this is David's reflection. David did not write this when he is hiding in the cave for his life. David was hiding in the cave for his life, and through the course of time, and through the course of God's working in His perfect time and in His perfect way, and through the course of all difficult types of seasons, eventually David got to a place where he could look back on a past trouble and go, you know what? It was okay. It was okay. I wanted it to not go that way. I wanted it to be handled the way I wanted it to be handled right then and right there. But in the hindsight of things, you know what? God came just when He needed to come and just exactly how He ought to have come. It was contrary to what I thought, but now in hindsight and reflection, I see that God did come, and we know that God does come when the time is right. Again, this is reflection. He delivers. He brought me into a broad place, and just see the last phrase of this section. He delivered me because He delighted in me. He delivered me because He delighted in me. Is there any child that a good parent, and I'm talking about a child now, is there any child that a good parent does not delight in? We know there are bad parents who don't delight in their children like they ought to. Right? When David says He delivered me because He delighted in me, David is no way, and he's getting ready to go into, He rewarded me according to my righteousness. In no way is David saying, the Lord delivered me because I'm a good person. Like, we know Scripture better than that, right? We know David better than that. Why did God deliver me? He delivered me because I was one of His own, because He delighted in me. The Lord delights in His children. The Lord desires to come and rescue us. The Lord is determined that He will not rescue us before the perfect time to come and rescue us. We know as good parents, that we can't just always make the day easy for our children. They need some hard days. They need to practice discipline. They need to face difficulty. They need to struggle against the common issues of life. They need to learn how to fight and how to struggle, and those things make them stronger. Sometimes letting them struggle before asking you for help shows them that they have dependence and that you are there for them. we can recognize all different benefits of facing struggle, and yet none of us want to face any. And so we serve a God who delights in us and will rescue us, but it's not as though He delights in us and so we never face difficulty. I do want you to see, as God steps in, the things that are said about God: riding on a cherub, darkness accompanies Him, the brightness of coals like fire, the Lord thundered from heaven, He sent out arrows and scattered them. The one who is described in this way, what is too big for Him? The answer is nothing. There's nothing too big for the one that comes running in this way and in this fashion. And so I want you to trust His goodness. I want you to trust His timing. And I want you to trust His ability to save. David is looking back on his life and going, God, You brought me through this. You brought me through that. You accomplished this. You are the one who is able to save. He looks back and says, You have done this. David looks again, right? Verse 1, he's writing this as he is sitting in the place that Saul used to sit. He says, You delivered me. You came this way. David does not believe that he is in the place that he is in by chance. He does not believe that he is in the place that he is in because of his own intelligence. He doesn't believe that if it were not for human opposition that he would be in a better place. If it weren't for his sin, that he would be in a higher place. He knows that the same God that delivered him, the same God that delivered Israel has delivered him and will continue to deliver him. I got to go quickly. Verse 21, the Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, He has recompensed me. David begins to count what sounds like his righteousness. We know David is not claiming sinless perfection. What is David speaking about? As I've already said, He delivered me because He delighted in me. He is speaking about himself as a forgiven man. As a forgiven man. David recognizes the grace and forgiveness of God. What did Nathan say to David way back in 2 Samuel chapter 12? God has put away your sin. David believed that. If we're going to come to Christ in salvation, we have to recognize a God who has put away our sin. If we're going to go forward useful in His hand, we must recognize a God who has put away our sin. And so David speaks, again, we know, not by his own self-righteousness, but he begins, the Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, He has recompensed me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all His judgments were before me, and as for His statutes, I did not depart from them. I was also blameless before Him, and I kept myself from iniquity. Therefore the Lord has recompensed me according to my righteousness and according to my cleanness in His eyes. In His eyes. David's righteousness is imputed righteousness. The Old Testament salvation depends on Christ just as much as New Testament salvation does. And I believe that David clearly, he focuses in, because he delighted in me, according to how He sees me. But I also believe, as David is getting ready to go into verse 26 and on, I also believe that David is drawing a correlation between righteous living and the rewards of God. I was teaching my kids today about man, right? Man, literally teaching them about man, the creation of man. We are made in the image of God. And so regularly we hear, mankind is nothing. We're sinners and, like filthy rags, just to be discarded and all of those things. God is everything and we are nothing. But that's not really what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches we're made in the image of God. The Bible teaches us that our righteousness is like filthy rags. But it cannot say that human beings are nothing and then in the same breath tell us that we ought to love one another. Right? Tell that we ought to value one another. Are we not, Christians ought to be those who value life, who recognize the value of the person across the aisle from them. And says, this is a human being created in the image of God, someone with an eternal soul who is on their way to hell without Christ. It's not that we are nothing, it's that God made us in His image, and we, because He has made us this way, we are worth saving. It would do us a lot of good to recognize we're worth saving because God made us that way, and just as much as the guy across from you is worth saving, you're worth saving because God has made you that way. And we can get in some of these same tensions of I'm not good and I'm only bad and God saved me, and at the same time, if we get too far into that, we forget that God is a God that rewards righteousness. There is something to be said, as we did repeatedly throughout 1 Samuel and the first couple of chapters of 2 Samuel, where David continued to do what was right even though it was hard. And David says, you've dealt well with me. I've followed after you and you have dealt well with me. No one's going to follow after God perfectly. No one's going to follow after God perfectly. But the problem is, if we don't recognize how right decisions and choices and righteous living of our past have been rewarded by God, we might forget that we serve a God who does reward. And we might forget that in the situation that we're dealing in now or we'll deal in tomorrow, that if we will follow Him and trust Him, then He has promised and will reward us. When God rewards me for doing well, the glory still goes to Him because He's the rewarder. All of us, we just talked about, sometimes your children, you got to push them through hard things and all that good stuff. Isn't it nice, though, when they do well and you can celebrate them and reward them? And isn't that right also, that you would do that and do that well and do that in such a way that draws a good, not prideful or undue attention? Does that not speak well of you as a parent? If you're always just beating your kid down, even when they're doing right, that speaks poorly of you as a parent. And I think that's what David is leading into as well. Keep going in verse 27. The Lord deals justly. There's no way I'm going to make it. There's no way I'm going to make it. The Lord deals justly with all men. I'm going to stop. What we're going to see is the Lord deals justly as He talks about being pure to those who are pure. And then finally, the Lord lifts up those who trust in Him. We've kind of gotten there. I'm going to finish it where it is, and we'll pick it up again next week. What David is seeing, and what I hope you're starting to get a picture of, and I don't want to do it injustice, so I'm going to stop here. But David is, at this spot in my life, I cannot change the past, I cannot fix the past, I cannot undo the past. At this spot in my life, I can look back and I can see where God has led. I can see where God has conquered, where God has been involved, where He has kept me from, or else I would have. I can see where God has overcome my faults and my failures. I can see where He has swooped in and where He has saved me. I can see where when I have done right, He has rewarded me, and I can see where I have done wrong, He has overcome that too, because He is God and He is able, and He delights in me. It would do us all well, last 2 Sundays ago, and I'm going to close with this. When we looked at Paul talking about the church at Corinth being his letter of commendation or recommendation, it does us well to reflect back on all that God has done. It does us well to look back and reflect on the people that God has used, to look back and reflect on the institutions that God has used. And sometimes those institutions aren't perfect. Those people aren't perfect. We've not been perfect. And yet we can arrive to a place where David is, where we can reflect back on our lives and we can thank God for what He has done, the people He has used to bring us to the place that He has brought us to. And we can sit and dwell and rest in His presence with thanksgiving. And let tomorrow worry about tomorrow for one time. Tomorrow will take care of the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. It does us well to sit and reflect and thank God. And when we do that, it'll increase our trust and our hope and our strength for tomorrow. The joy of the Lord is my strength. I find my strength when I stand upon my rock, Jesus Christ. Father, we thank You for Your word. God, I pray that it's been beneficial to the hearer tonight. Lord, I pray that You would help us to sit and reflect, God, as David did and wrote You this song. God, just praising You and exalting You and honoring Your name. God, recognizing how You came in and rescued. Yes, recognizing that some of the difficulties of the past. Recognizing those times. God, and I dare say there's not a one of us who sits here and doesn't have some kind of pressing thing upon us even tonight. But God, I pray that You would draw our attention away from that for just a little bit, and God, show us all the things that used to trouble us, used to harm us. And God, that we would be strengthened by that. God, You have brought us through too much. You have given us too much. You have promised us too much for us to worry about what might come tomorrow. As if You might suddenly disappear, or suddenly not be able, or suddenly become indifferent. God, we need to know nothing else other than that You created us, and You saved us, and You love us. God, to know that You will continue to keep us and to guide us into the image of Your perfect Son. God, we thank You for that tonight. I pray that You would bless us, God, as we do our best to follow after You. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Just a couple of things before I let you go. This Saturday morning, if at all possible, the more hands, the merrier. Many hands might light work, whatever slogan I'm trying to throw at you. But at 9 a.m., the big part of it is going to be moving a lot of the kitchen stuff and getting that put, into cabinets, into drawers, kind of organizing some of that stuff. The ladies tend to be better at that thing, generally speaking. And so I'm hoping to have some young, strong backs and weak minds to move some buckets full of things and then let the ladies take over that spot. And then the other thing that we want to do is move some tables and chairs around to get some of our Sunday school stuff set up. Things are kind of moving around a little bit. What I intend to do, and I say I intend to do it, nothing has kind of stepped in the way of doing this. And I don't foresee anything either. But nonetheless, what I intend to do is the Rule 62 group. That's the AA group that historically has met out in the fellowship hall. And we don't talk about them a whole lot, and so maybe there's more questions than there is knowledge. But that is that's obviously for folks that are battling addiction and things like that. I have known the leaders of that since that started. It actually started with Robert Jones. Most of y'all will know him. And then Paul Moon was another one that some of you may or may not know. But Christian Men has kind of been handed down. And the group that's over there now, it's a man named Robert and his wife that are running it. And I have all the confidence in the world talking to them that the name of Christ is still very highly regarded. They've shared with me a couple of stories about, sharing the gospel and folks getting saved and things like that. So they have been using the facilities here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday for a long time. And so anyway, they've historically been out in the fellowship hall, but they have a lot of stuff they have to put up and take down and move and everything. So what I intend to do is to give them this Sunday school room right here in the upstairs, the big Sunday school room that has the 2 pianos in it, is to give them that space. And let them have their, just have that space all to them. We want to make sure that all the kids know to stay out of there. They're going to use the front doors instead of these 2 glass doors and come in that way most regularly. And he said they would clear out a little bit early on Wednesday nights. They meet from 5:30 to 6:45 normally. So they're going to clear out a little bit early on Wednesday night so that, the parking lot is clear and everyone can come in. But that's the plan for them moving forward. Our Sunday morning kids are going to start using one of the basement classrooms. We don't use it already on Sunday night, and then Wednesday night we're going to either I'm going to put a piano out in the fellowship hall, so they might either use that or just use that room just for kids choir. But that's kind of to make everybody aware of that. A lot of things are getting moved around, so some of the moving has to do with that as well, getting all those spaces set. For how they're going to be used in the near future, in the foreseeable future. So if at all possible you can help with that, that would be great. I would really appreciate it. I'm sure there are other announcements that I might be forgetting. Is there anything? The Stones party that's coming up next Saturday, I hate that I'm going to be out of town. I won't be able to be here for that, but keep that in mind. Have you gotten, make sure you get, I'm not going to ask her for everybody, make sure you give head count and let her know your intention with that. And then I guess kind of the other thing is the baby bottle boomerang that's going on throughout the month. And then May 31st, the last Sunday of the month, I do want to have a graduation celebration. I put it on the slide. I haven't sent anything out. That'll be after. We'll do our regular Sunday night, and it will be out in the fellowship hall. Joel asked as well, not this week because it's Mother's Day. We won't have Sunday night service, but the 17th will be our first Sunday night back out in the fellowship hall. We are planning on doing food and everything. So excited about that. But on the last Sunday of the month, May 31st, we'll do a celebration for our graduates. It'll be after our regular class time and all that stuff. But we want to let you guys bring food. It's always special and different when you guys bring food, and we have different options and more options. And we've got a couple of gifts for the graduates. So keep that in mind as well. All right. Thank you for being here tonight. I pray it's been a blessing to you, and you are dismissed.